Now, this early dinosaur feasts on the struggling herbivores. This is Mars today. Waterless, airless, lifeless. A harsh, unforgiving desert where nothing lives. Vastly different than Earth. The chilling reality is this could have been Earth if a mass extinction 200 million years ago had succeeded. It happened just before the reign of dinosaurs, in a time called the Triassic. The world of the Triassic is dominated by humid jungle, with lush forests and vast wooded plains stretching from pole to pole.
The tropics of the Triassic would be like the tropics of today, but whereas in our world, as you go north or south from the equator, it gets cooler. Well, in the Triassic, it probably stayed warm because carbon dioxide levels, greenhouse gases were much higher. But I think the greatest difference would be the plants and the animals.
A host of bizarre creatures roamed this planet. Flying reptiles, giant armor-plated herbivores, and cunning predators lurking in the shadows. But most important to humans, our own tiny ancestors, the first true mammals. All of these animals inhabit a vast supercontinent called Pangaea, the place land dwellers have called home for tens of millions of years.
The Triassic would have to have been one of the coolest crossroads of time to ever visit, I think. It really is this strange, peculiar intersection between what came before and what has become after.
Planet Earth is still in recovery after the mother of all mass extinctions left it for dead. $50 million years earlier, the Permian period ended tragically when the Earth split apart in Siberia, oozing toxic lava for 1 million years. Known as the Great Dyke, this cataclysmic event turned a lush and thriving wonderland into a barren, hostile domain. More than 90% of all species were lost forever. But a few animals made it through, and from this meager handful of survivors, life has slowly but surely clawed its way back from the brink. After 50 million years, ecosystems have returned to something approaching normal. But beneath their feet, the forces that brought Pangaea together millions of years in the past are now splitting it apart. The Earth's crust floats on a layer of molten rock called the mantle. The flow of rock in the mantle moves the continents over time. As these forces tear Pangaea apart, an extraordinary amount of lava will be expelled from the bowels of the Earth. The gears of mass extinction are in motion. Disaster is about to strike. In what is now the Appalachian Mountains of eastern North America, a deep rumble shakes the landscape. A startled flock of Eudimorphodon takes flight. They sense that something is wrong. But there is nowhere to run from the enemy gathering below. These bird-like creatures are among the first flying reptiles, or pterosaurs.
Pterosaurs were the first vertebrates to actually evolve powered flight. Going not just from high up in the trees to down on the ground, but actually the reverse, being able to go from the ground up.
An elongated fourth finger forms the leading edge of their thin wings. To us, it might resemble a bat, but it flies as gracefully as a bird.
Was somewhere about the size of a seagull. And it could probably glide and flap its wings and would benefit from having those rather long wings that a seagull has, meaning that it can take advantage of air currents to maintain it aloft. It doesn't have to flap furiously all the time like a hummingbird.
And like a seagull, the Eudimorphodon use their gliding ability to patrol the waterways for food. They dine almost exclusively on fish. As the Eudimorphodon soar, another rumble. The Triassic world's grim fate is knocking at the door. Basking in the sun below, a group of Rutiodons take little notice that the end of the world is coming. 12 feet long, armored from head to tail, and equipped with large cone-shaped fangs, these Rutiodons are the top predators in the lakes and ponds of Pangaea. Rutiodon resembles a crocodile. Though they are not related to each other, scientists believe it occupied a similar niche in the ecosystem. An ambush predator that never strayed far from the water.
I think most of the time Rutiodon was eating fish, just based on the shape of the skull. But given the opportunity, something's not paying attention when it comes down to drink some water at the riverside, Rutiodon would probably be able to swipe at them and take them into the water and drown them, probably.
But the dominant animals of the Triassic are heavily armored herbivores like Desmatasuchus. With no predators big enough to take them down, they roam wherever they please. They can grow as big as a 2-ton truck, and they're fortified against any potential attackers.
Desmatasuchus has got this full-blown armor all over its back with these giant shields and these giant spikes that stick off over its shoulders. No doubt that this could have been a great offensive piece of weaponry at the time when some animal is attacking it.
But Desmatasuchus's days of peacefully grazing are numbered. For weeks, all the animals of this place have ignored the mysterious rumblings. And now they will pay the price. Towering plumes of searing vapor stream into the sky. These geysers are like Old Faithful, but 100 times more powerful. Superheated steam and debris rocket over a mile into the air. And this is just the beginning. Rolling clouds of steam subsume the Eudimorphodon. The Desmatasuchus lead the way to higher ground. while Rutiodon seeks shelter in the deep. But there will be no escape. The steam eruptions are just a warning shot. Lava eruptions are not far behind. Pangaea is coming apart at the seams. "200 million years ago, the supercontinent of Pangaea began to split apart, ushering the world into a dark period of mass extinction. In what is now the eastern United States, huge eruptions of scalding hot steam have kicked off one of the largest volcanic events in Earth history, brought on by the breakup of this landmass. The rifting is in the process of forming the Atlantic Ocean basin, so scientists call the resulting volcanic eruptions CAMP, or the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province.
The formation of the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province is one of the really important milestones in Earth history. It was a cornerstone, really, of the formation of what was to come afterwards. But it was also a gravestone. The formation of these caused this enormous mass extinction.
CAMP is the largest igneous province known in the solar system, and CAMP itself covered 4 different continents. It spanned 11 million square kilometers, which is larger than the entirety of the United States.
Weeks pass, and the steam eruptions in North America continue. One mother does her best to shield her young from the approach of Armageddon. This is Megazostrodon, our closest ancestor of this time. Its long jaws and rows of tiny sharp teeth suggest a reptilian origin, but it is covered in hair, not scales. Megazostrodon is the first true mammal. The future of the entire class of animals rests with it.
Megazostrodon was quite a small creature. You've got to think of something like a weasel, I guess, quite long and thin. You might hardly have noticed it. Like weasels today, it's quite secretive.
And it's a pretty important survivor for us because it's the animal that is related to modern mammals. Probably, like most small animals of that size, is a burrowing animal.
Megazostrodon is well protected in its burrow, but those on the surface are not so lucky. The ground rumbles. Then, with an ear-splitting boom, the camp eruptions begin in earnest. Lava bursts out of huge cracks in the earth. Fountains of magma explode into the air. It's far more destructive than a typical volcano that explodes from a single mountaintop. These cracks can be dozens of miles long. A tidal wave of flame courses from the fissures.
You have almost like a wave of this stuff slowly moving over the landscape, and all these poor animals in its way are running for their lives.
Herds of lumber herbivores run from the walls of flame, but there's no escape. Their spikes may protect them from predators, but they only slow them down now.
Anything in its path is going to be completely immediately wiped out.
For weeks, even months on end, the fissures spew lava onto the surface. The molten rock destroys anything it touches, laying waste to the landscape.
We have no human understanding or connection to an event such as camp. Nothing like that has happened since humans evolved.
Animals evacuate ground zero. For those that used to live in what is now the east coast of the United States, there is no home left. As the exodus continues, one type of animal seems better equipped to adjust to the changes. The earliest dinosaurs, like Styracosaurus. Styracosaurus and others like him are just a few feet tall, but they're unique in this world, the only animals to walk upright on two legs.
Being bipedal is a very rare thing to do. Mammals do it in terms of humans and in terms of kangaroos. But dinosaurs were the first ones to really take advantage of running on two legs.
Styracosaurus is a nimble hunter in a world of lumbering quadrupeds.
Well, what a shock for all these animals. Gee, I've been on land for 100 million years. I've never seen anybody walk around with his hind legs before. It would have looked maybe ridiculous, but maybe not, once that thing started running at you at high speed.
While far from the T-Rex of its day, its prowess grows as larger animals continue to struggle.
We had these early dinosaurs not yet big enough to take down one of these big reptilian types, but certainly big enough to take down their young.
But even this nimble predator cannot outrun this devastation. The eruptions continue. Deadly side effects begin to take hold on every corner of the globe. The Earth has been set on an ominous path. How long before the blue planet becomes the red planet? For decades, horrific volcanic eruptions have spewed vast amounts of lava onto Earth's surface. The massive eruptions have a toxic effect on Earth's atmosphere.
The volcanic eruptions don't just produce lava, that's the most immediate consequence. They also produce a great deal of gas, which is dissolved at high pressure within the magma. As that comes towards the surface, the pressure reduces and this explodes out of the lava into the atmosphere.
Millions of tons of toxic gas are pumped into the air. The amount of carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere increases exponentially.
Let's take an analogy here. Let's go back, and instead of these volcanoes going off, let's say that we build 10,000 coal-fired power plants. Line them all up, tons of coal coming in, plant after power plant after power plant after power plant, all with their chimneys streaming up gas into the atmosphere. That's exactly what's going on with these magmatic provinces.
Temperatures skyrocket. It's unbearably hot. Even animals that live in the water, like Rutiodon, are affected. They lie in the shallows, trying to stay cool, but they must venture up onto land to lay eggs. It's a fatal flaw that dooms their species.
Some reptiles today, heat actually determines the sex of the embryo. So I could imagine back in the Triassic, if some of these animals had this type of reproductive strategy, where sex determination was based on temperature. You could drive a species to extinction by producing just males and males and males and males, and all you're producing is males. And so that would be a devastating way to kill off a species.
It's also far more difficult to stay nourished. The heat saps their strength. Insatiable hunger drives them to turn on their children, as crocodiles are known to do today. Cannibalism might well seal the fate of this species. The slow death march of extinction goes on. The sudden warming of the globe ushers in another catastrophic side effect. Oxygen levels plunge to record lows.
There's roughly half the concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere that we have today. So it would have been much more difficult, given the same respiratory apparatus, for an organism to breathe in the late Triassic than it would be for the same organism today.
In what is now the southwestern US, a herd of Desmartasuchus forages for food. The air is thick with carbon dioxide, the sun unbearably hot. Trying to breathe here is like trying to breathe at the top of Mount Everest. The big armored beasts have never feared a predator. But now, their greatest enemy may lurk within their own bodies. Their primitive lung system, combined with a sprawling posture, makes it difficult to breathe and move at the same time. Desmartasuchus saunters with a side-to-side motion, much like a modern lizard. As it goes, that flexion expands one lung and compresses the other, a trait called carrier's constraint.
Animals like lizards and salamanders that move in this sprawling way, where the body has to swing from side to side a great deal, that actually limits the capacity of the lungs and the capacity to breathe.
The low oxygen is also wreaking havoc on their reproduction rate. Conditions thrust the developing embryos into a lethal catch-22.
Now, if we go back to the Triassic and oxygen levels are equivalent to being at 14,000 feet, your reproductive system is going to be vastly challenged. An egg has to have oxygen coming in through it, enough so that the embryo can develop. At the same time, an egg also has to hold water in. And so this is really opposite aspects. You have to have a lot of holes in your egg to let the oxygen come in, and the lower the atmospheric oxygen, the more holes you need. But on the other turn, the more holes you have, the more water can evaporate out, causing death as well.
With each passing year, fewer Desmartasuchus are hatching. And those that do are not growing as large as previous generations. Their population will slowly ebb away in the coming years. Styracosaurus is quick to take advantage of the weakened Desmartasuchus. For Styracosaurus, walking upright eliminates the problem of carrier's constraint that plagues Desmartasuchus.
Once the limbs go straight under the body, they're not interfering with the internal organs in the torso. And that allows the lungs to expand more, to operate at a higher level.
Scientists theorize that they may have had extra air sacs that continuously circulated oxygen through their respiratory system. Today, This is the same feature that allows birds to fly at very high altitudes for extended periods of time.
The dinosaur lung is the same as a bird lung. A bird sitting here right next to me, breathing the same air I am, is going to extract about 1/3 more oxygen than I do. So you might say that, gee, this is a coincidence. Oxygen drops to its lowest point in 500 million years. The most efficient lung the world has ever seen appears. But evolution doesn't usually run for or derive from such coincidences. This really seems to be cause and effect.
A full-grown Desmatosuchus was once too large for Styracosaurus to take down. But now, this early dinosaur feasts on the struggling herbivores.
It would have been really unfair, really. You've got this creature which can run rings around you, whereas if you're the prey, you're trying to run away from this thing and you're gasping for breath.
Centuries pass. In North America, where the rifting first started, it seems that new fissures are erupting every day. The face of the supercontinent is melting like hot wax. The volcanic stranglehold tightens with no end in sight. The Earth is morphing into a new world. But will it be a world filled with life or death? Heard the heavens fill with shouting, and there rained a ghastly dew. Alfred Lord Tennyson, 1842. "50,000 years into a terrible mass extinction, our planet is transforming into an alien world. Barren landscapes, skyrocketing carbon dioxide levels, thinning air. The daytime sky is tinted red. It's a scene expected on Mars, not on planet Earth. Global warming has turned lush jungles into tinder-dry forests. Wildfires are commonplace. In the Triassic world, these fires will burn until there's nothing left to destroy.
From space, it would have been fantastic. You would have seen this enormous black area, and perhaps even the forest fires, because as this stuff pours out, that tropical vegetation of the Triassic is going to catch fire. And so it's like a huge spreading cancer on the surface of the Earth.
The fires add more pollutants to the air, only intensifying the disaster. Rolling clouds of ash cover the landscape. Burying thousands of hapless victims. No one is spared. Rutiodon seeks shelter from the storm, but their homes offer no protection. The water in Pangaea's lakes and streams turns to a cement-like paste. For the Rutiodons, the results are dreadful. The ash mixes with water vapor in the atmosphere, resulting in acid rain. It scalds the landscape, laying waste to whatever plant life remains.
We know from modern examples of acid rain that this quickly kills trees and other larger plants. And if it stops, then they will recover. But if this acid rain continues, and this may have been the case at the end of the Triassic, their root systems wither away and the soil is released. And then, of course, a shower of rain will have a devastating erosional effect.
Now the disaster reaches into the oceans.
All that carbon dioxide, a lot of it gets pulled into the ocean and dissolved. But as it does so, it causes the oceans to get more and more acidic.
Microscopic plankton, the base of the marine food chain, dies in the hot acidic waters. As a result, fish populations around the world are decimated. And as the fish go, all the creatures that rely on them for sustenance go too. All over the world, flocks of Eudimorphodon search in vain for fish that have simply disappeared. Pangea teeming rivers and pristine lakes are now stagnant. The dead bodies that litter the ground now provide an emergency food source for these flying reptiles. Under normal circumstances, Eudimorphodon would never scavenge a carcass. But hunger trumps all rules. It will hold them over for now. But it is not enough to stave off extinction. "70,000 years after the disaster began, starvation is now the norm for the animal kingdom. The world is barely recognizable. Taken day by day, the strangulation was slow. But the long-term effects are overwhelming.
We're starting to see now not just organisms dying out and disappearing, but new types of organisms replacing them. And in this particular case, it's not animals, it's bacteria.
This bacteria turns our once crystal blue oceans into dingy purple cesspools. The sky grows jaundiced. The whole world smells of rotten eggs. In what is now South Africa, one creature clings to life amid the suffering. Our ancestor, Megazostrodon. Megazostrodon's instincts have served her well. Once again, her burrow protects her from the clouds of putrid gas. Like the early dinosaurs, Megazostrodon also has a more advanced lung design, but of a different sort than Styracosaurus. This small mammal has a sheet of muscle and tendon that separates its lungs from the rest of its internal organs, a diaphragm. This, combined with its small size, helps it breathe in the increasingly toxic atmosphere.
Body size is one thing that paleontologists love to look at. Did all the small animals at this time period go extinct? Or did all the large animals go extinct? And there's biological reasons why small or large animals might be affected at any single time.
In addition to this, Megazostrodon is one of the first animals in history to nurse its young. Mammary glands evolved from sweat glands. It's a key advantage. A female Megazostrodon uses her own body to keep her children fed, while the rest of the animal kingdom must forage. But will this be enough to save her species? The future of all mammals, including us, rests on her tiny shoulders. Pity is for the living, envy is for the dead. Mark Twain, 1884. "250,000 years into a volcanic catastrophe, the Earth is unrecognizable. From space, the fissures can be seen stretching for thousands of miles, from modern-day Boston to Rio de Janeiro. The giant wounds are still bleeding liquid rock.
The volume that is believed to have extruded is incredibly large. Estimates put it on the order of 2 million square kilometers of magma being outpouring across all of these basins.
That's more than half the size of all the world's oceans today. The signs of mass extinction are sobering. Floodplains that once hosted thriving communities of animals are devoid of life. Where verdant rainforests once stood, only desert remains.
It's as if this very vegetated, wonderful world somehow gets perturbed to the point that we now have this desertification taking place over enormous areas of some continents.
Parts of the world, at least, it might have looked like the surface of Mars. I mean, if you remove plants, you lose the soil, and then you get a more extreme kind of situation. This may not have covered the whole world, but certainly parts of it.
In those few regions where life still exists, dinosaurs like Styracosaurus are rising to prominence. In addition to its advanced lungs, Styracosaurus staves off extinction by brooding its nest. Mothers lay their eggs partially exposed. Then they use their bodies for warmth or shade as necessary. This body contact allows a mother to fine-tune the temperature of her eggs, fostering a close, if not maternal, relationship with her young. And in the process, her species is rewarded with stronger, hardier offspring.
So while everything else is dying, it's as if we start getting more and more dinosaurs and bigger dinosaurs.
Equipped with these remarkable innovations, Styracosaurus is positioned to survive this catastrophe. Over 500,000 years after they began, the Camp basalt eruptions finally draw to a close. Pangaea is no more. The movement of the Earth's crust below has ripped the supercontinent apart. The liquid rock foundation for the Atlantic Ocean has been poured. The final death toll is almost unfathomable. 3/4 of the world's species are gone forever. The hardest hit on land are large armored herbivores like Desmartosuchus. The Rutiodons are also extinct, another victim of a primitive lung design. But as gruesome as it is on land, the oceans are far worse off. Vast coral reefs that characterize the warm tropical Triassic Sea are almost completely gone.
This is one of the big five, we say, one of the five biggest mass extinctions in the history of the planet. It was a major crossroads in evolution.
The Earth has been purged. But some creatures will not be vanquished. The future depends on them. Times go by turns, and chances change by course. Robert Southwell, 1595. The Triassic mass extinction is finally over. After 600,000 years, the planet is nearly lifeless. The air is still barely breathable. It will take millions of years to rebound. At the same time, carbon dioxide levels are at their highest point in history. 10 times the level that exists today.
Well, at the end of the Triassic, there was way more CO2 than we have on our planet today. And heaven help us if we ever get to Triassic levels, because we can see what that high CO2 did in the past.
But incredibly, this isn't the end. Rifting that caused the mass extinction results in the opening of the Atlantic Ocean. The rest of Pangaea is following suit, resulting in the 7 distinct continents we know today. The world, our present-day world, is born. Some scientists theorize that this is part of a larger cycle of breakup and reattachment. One day, the continents may be joined again as they were in Pangaea.
Why continents come together and why they pull apart is still a great mystery. We do know that the continents undergo something that has been called a Wilson supercycle, that every 200 million years or so, all the continents come together. It's kind of like bumper cars all arriving in the very middle of the place, smash together, sit together for some time, and then tear apart. And this coming together and tearing apart process takes about 200 million years. So that 200 million years from now, we expect they will all have come back together and collided once more.
In this brave new world, the first glimmers of hope begin to rise from the ashes. The early dinosaurs have managed to survive. Styracosaurus and its small cousins have proven their supremacy under the most severe conditions imaginable. Now, the Earth is theirs. With the world void of competition, they multiply and spread out, creating new habitats and new species.
The dinosaurs really start to come into their own and start to evolve the many different forms that we see throughout the Jurassic and the Cretaceous.
The bigger, stronger, fiercer dinosaurs that evolved from this hardy stock will rule the animal kingdom for the next 150 million years.
There's no looking back. It's now the age of dinosaurs completely. The Triassic is this big crossroads. It was anybody's game, and yet now we have this big change in the world. We have lots of heating, lowered oxygen, and it's a perfect dinosaur world.
Beneath the feet of these giant lizards are the ancestors of modern mammals, the direct descendants of Megazostrodon.
If Megazostrodon hadn't made it through, we wouldn't be here today.
Resilient and well protected in its underground lair, Megazostrodon has made it through where so many others have died. Living quietly, Megazostrodon will thrive in the shadows. Waiting patiently for the time when its descendants will rule the earth.